All right, ladies and gentlemen, to the seventh episode of the Healing Through Mind and Motion podcast, where we explore the relationships of the mind and body and how we can use those tools to overcome chronic pain and illness in our lives so that we may live a life that we love. I'm your host, Brian Cade, the owner of Strength from Within. And today we have a special guest, is Charlotte. She has a powerful story of healing and her journey through it of overcoming MS. And what I love is lately, I've been studying a lot of different pieces about epigenetics and the body's ability to turn on and off genes, and several stories of people overcoming MS. And so Charlotte has done just that, and we get to hear her story today. So, welcome to the show, Charlotte.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, I wanted to start out and just kind of hear basically where it started, what was going on before when you first started having symptoms, and how, yeah, just kind of the beginning of the journey.
Yeah, so it was 11 years ago, and I was, I had I'd had my son, so he was two, and I had always been kind of anxious, and then I sort of maybe even more anxious after I had him. And then because what I mainly was anxious about was the world and
Mm.
the state of the world, and thinking that I needed to do something to help, and the feeling of um, the anxiety I had of like I brought this baby into the world, and how am I gonna help make the world better for him. It was kind of at the root of it, I think. So yeah, that was, and I was working. I'd done a permaculture course, which is, I don't know if you know, but it's like sort of about how to live sustainably, um, and a lot to do with growing food and things like that. And the people that I'd met there just made me even more anxious because they were like, oh my God, the world is going to end. I mean, there was one, I mean, this is really sad. There was one man who killed himself because he was so worried, more and more crazy. And I was trying to do all these little projects and had several jobs, and it was all a bit, it was like far too much to, to cope with at the time.
Wow. So you were anxious. It seems like you were anxious about the world. You joined a group that was doing stuff to work with it, but they
Yeah.
were also anxious about it, which kind of fed that cycle.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Really, really
Yeah.
good idea.
And and so how did you end up? What symptoms started showing up? What was the transition?
Well, first of all, I had some funny feelings in my legs. Oh, right, one leg to begin with. The only way I remember describing it, it was like my leg was wrapped in cotton wool, um, and then that kind of spread up up my body until most of my body felt like that. Then I lost my balance. I basically my whole body. I kind of lost my grip. I had freezing cold feet all the time. Um, I was, I just like my body. I was lucky my head was still okay, like because a lot of people with MS and they have problems with their eyesight. So my head was okay, but the whole of my body, I was like, I couldn't really walk at all. I looked like I was drunk. I lost my balance. I found it really hard to go up the stairs. Um, I just couldn't. It's just my whole body didn't work really. Yeah.
Wow. And so this was 11 years ago. Your feet were cold, your legs didn't really work. It was like you were drunk.
Yeah.
It, and was this a daily experience? Was it like every now and then, or what was that like?
Yeah, it was constant. I know that like a lot of people it's relapsing, remitting, but it, there was no remitting. It was just like got worse and worse and worse, um, until I found out what it was, and went into hospital and had loads of drugs to calm it down.
Wow. And so, yeah, so for you, it was just a constant thing. And you said before you knew it was MS, you said you were still, like, you were aware of symptoms, but how long did it take from symptoms to knowing that, okay, this is what I have?
Well, the symptoms I think started in June. I'm not quite sure when it happened. What happened was I was in the supermarket, and a lady who was quite far away from me. A lady fell over, and then a couple of people went to help her, And I heard her, which is, I really like, I feel like this was meant to be for me, because it was, you shouldn't normally hear somebody from that far away, but I heard her say, she said, "Oh, don't worry, I'm okay. I've got MS," as though like this was normal for her to just fall over. And I was like, "Oh my god, that's what I've been saying." Yeah, about like not being able to feel my. She said, "I can't feel my legs. I've got MS." And I thought that's what I've been saying. So I went home and then obviously went on the internet, typed in MS, and read, and I was like, "Oh my god, I've got like almost all of these symptoms." And reading about how bad it could be, the traditional view of MS made me even worse. So I would sit there and read all this horrible, horrible stuff, and have more. They would cause relapses. It would just from reading it, through the stress, the fear um, of thinking what will happen to me, and reading that like my chances of um, dying really young and much higher, all these really, really horrible things. And bearing in mind, well, he was 3 by then. I had a 3-year-old son, and I was so worried for him that I was going to be disabled, and he would have to like be a child carer. It was bad, but it made it worse every time I read about it. So um, yeah, that's what happened.
So it seems like the more you read about the negative aspects of it, the more stressed your body came.
Yes,
It sounds like the symptoms got even worse because of it.
yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Wow.
I'd read something and wake up the next day, and have another symptom.
Wow. And so what do you think was going on there? And I know you've done a lot of work in the process, but like for someone listening and they're hearing that, what was at play there when you're reading stress, new symptoms? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, the MS is to do with your nervous system. So I was now I understand more about your parasympathetic and your sympathetic. I was in like super high sympathetic all the time, because I was still, I didn't stop. I like my whole body was. Now I look back, I'm like, I should have just, from that first symptom, I should have just stopped everything and
Yeah.
rested and thought, what is this symptom trying to tell me? But I didn't. I carried on, and if anything, I did more and more, because I don't know why, but I didn't let myself stop. And so, and then having the stress of, I was already stressed. I was already trying to do too much and worrying too much and everything, and then having these symptoms which were making everything harder to do. And then eventually I wasn't able to do them. I was like, I was forced by my body to stop doing things. But for quite a while, I just tried to desperately carry on. And I see now it's just the amount of stress was too much, and that was all of the symptoms was just my body's way of saying, "Oh my God, you've got to stop. You've got to stop doing everything and just rest."
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's really powerful thing there that is the thing that where you said your body was telling you to stop, and instead of listening, it was like we pushed through issues, and I've done it myself for my own conditions, where it's like well, I don't want this to stop me, so I'm going to push harder.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Which
the
is
very
best.
thing that we're trying to do to stay better is actually making our body worse until it's to the point where it's like, no, I'm going to force you to stop. Like there is no option but to lay there now.
Yes. No
Yeah.
choice.
And so what would you tell somebody who's kind of in that cycle where they're reading about it, they're already stressed, and they're in some ways feeding their own cycle?
Well, I mean, there are two, because like some things are hard. You can't just stop everything, but you can always ask for help. Um, and the main thing that I've learned now is to take a little break, even if you think I can't just stop everything, but you could at least give yourself an hour or a little bit of time, and lie down and relax, and just like try to, I mean, I talk to my body now like as though it's a separate thing. And then I know this is going to sound really weird, but like if I have any feeling at all, I think I talk to it, and I go, oh, what are you trying to say? But I get myself in quite a calm state first to really to think there must be a reason that this is happening. My body's trying to talk to me, tell me something. And normally, if I just give myself a little bit of time, then I realise, and I think there may be something I'm doing that I don't really want to do. I don't feel like I can say I don't want to do it, but like my secretly I don't want to do it. And then I think, okay, is that worth? What reason would I keep doing that for when my body's really clearly saying no? And then and trying, well, not trying, just to say I won't do this unless, I know this doesn't sound clear, but like I know sometimes you do have to do something you don't want to do, but then you could at least try to find some way to make it easier, or to ask for help or something, or even just to acknowledge it. It's like, I know I don't want to do this, but I do have to do it, and I'll just like try to relax as most as I can. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, just listen. Your body's got far more wisdom than your brain, because it will tell you the truth, um, and if you don't listen, it will just shout even louder until you do listen. Is my experience. So yeah, I would just try and take a bit of time and listen and do what
Yeah,
you can to begin with.
beautiful. Yeah, that's the one of the, when I was looking at different stories of healing, especially incurable illness, it seems like that relationship with your own body, where you, like you said, actually taking the time to talk with it and hear what it's telling you.
Yeah,
And there's so much information that our body's trying to tell us that we are like, well, I got stuff to do, so we're going to block it out.
yeah,
And it sounds like even if you need to block it out for some time, you still like make an agreement with that part, like, hey, I need to do this. I don't want to. I'm going to do it, and then I'm going to rest.
yes, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, your body will help you, like, but you just have to. If it knows that you've acknowledged it, then it's quite often just happy with that. If it knows you've got like a plan, even if you can't do anything at the moment, you're like, well, I still have to do this because there's no choice. But I know that deep down I don't want to do this, and I will do my very best to not do it again in the future, or to do something else, or make it better in some way to 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 calm, because that's like the truth.
yeah,
All it's doing is telling you the truth. Um, that your brain's overridden because you go, oh, but these people need me, or I have to do it because of whatever reason. There's loads of reasons we do stuff that is not for our best, at heart. But the the more you can pay attention to that, the more like problems you'll solve for the future, because you won't, as in you won't get them, because you were listening to the truth to begin with.
right. And real quick, I noticed that we have a couple of guests that are on the podcast right now. Just people listening to us as because we are live. If
Okay,
anyone has questions for Charlotte, you can. I believe there's a space for a chat, so you can ask your question, and we'll make sure to ask her here today.
okay.
Uh, and so, just to get a little bit, so we've kind of moved to like the relationship that you built, but there was a time that you were going to see doctors and drugs, and you kind of went the normal traditional route of like, let's heal my body, and you saw doctors. What was that experience like? What did you try that didn't work, and some of your experience with that?
Yeah, it was so. Um, I went into hospital, not through. I went to see a doctor to try to find for sure what was wrong, even though I knew it was MS by then, and
Yeah,
he sent me straight to the hospital to stay. I went to like a hospital to have the test, and then to another hospital to stay in, where they did so many tests, and I by the time I came out of there, I felt 50 times worse than when I went in, because they did a lumbar puncture that and then got me off, and I had this terrible headache. But anyway, I felt even worse, and so then they're like, "Oh, you should have these drugs," and they told me I should have the strongest drugs that were available for MS at the time, and I wasn't really in any state to like stick up for myself or argue or anything like that, so I just agreed with it, and so I started having them, which involved going to the hospital every 4 weeks and having a drip and sitting in a room with other people doing the same, who would then like be the opposite to me. They would be like oh, I'm not going to change anything I do. They hated that I changed my diet and changed all these things by following the Overcoming MS plan. But so it made it even worse. And then they the doctor, like when I was in hospital, I asked him, I knew he would say no, but I asked him if I should change my diet, and he was like, no. It's basically their thing was like, you've got such a terrible disease that you're never going to get better from. So why would you want to make your life any worse by cutting out the food that gives you some pleasure, as in junk food, and spending time and money and effort eating healthily? Don't bother doing that. Come here and have our super expensive drugs every month for the rest of your life. That was the basic message. And then so
Wow.
stayed I stayed in their system for like the time when I was on the drugs. Then I came off the drugs because I was very fortunate. My cousin, she's a doctor now, but she was a junior doctor at the time. So I asked her to go on the PubMed system and get every bit of research about the drugs that I was on, because I heard that you could have, if you came off them too early, you could have a rebound and all of this stuff. So I did my own research to decide when to come off them. And then I didn't go back to the neurologist for a while, and then I thought, oh, maybe I should, because I had these other symptoms that were like more chronic fatigue symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
And then he went, and he said to me, and I should have gone with, something that's a big tip I have for anybody is always take somebody with you to go to any doctor, because who is like on your side and who knows that there's more that you can do than just take drugs. But I went on my own, and he drew a graph. He was quite cross with me for coming off the drugs and not going on to other drugs. He tried to persuade me onto these even stronger drugs that involved going and staying in hospital for a week. And when I said no, he drew a graph that like was a line just a straight line going down, that showed me that in 2 years from then, which is several years, I've gone way past the 2 year limit now that he gave
Yeah.
me.
How
He
long's
said,
it
sorry,
How long's it been?
hang on, if I work it out, so that would be 7 years ago now. So
Okay.
I've gone 5 years past his cut-off line, because he told me that I wouldn't be able to walk, talk, or eat within 2 years. So that
Wow.
was 7 years ago he said that. And I just would like to clarify, to tell you, I can do all those things perfectly well. But I had to do a lot of work to clear. I don't know if you've heard, I presume you've heard the word nocebo, as in like
Yeah.
placebo, but nocebo. And yeah, luckily I had a brilliant therapist, and I knew all of the stuff. I did tapping, I did all of the things I could do to get, because I know how powerful it is for a doctor to say something. And I was so cross with him for saying it. Like, how dare he tell me like what my body was going to do? But and so I was so pleased as well on the 2 year 2 years after I saw him, I had like a really lovely dinner, like a meal to celebrate, because I was like, look, I've got to 2 years and I can do all those things, which therefore it means it's not true.
Yeah, that's amazing. It sounds like, well, I want to go on the nocebo effect real quick. Is like, for those that are listening, my understanding is that when a doctor tells you something, if they're not careful with what they share, there's actually been cases of someone being told like, "Hey, you have this really bad illness. You're going to die in 6 months." And when the person dies 6 months later, they actually will do an autopsy and find out that it was a benign tumor and that there was no reason the person should have died. And there's many cases of like people living into the experience of what the doctor says, as this is how your life's going to be. And so it seemed like that was the message, is like, your life is going to be so bad, you should eat junk food, enjoy it, and then come here for and spend a week in the hospital every week, every month.
Yes, yep. That was the message. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was it? Because what was it for you that allowed you to be like, you know what, that's not for me. I'm not choosing that life.
That's interesting. Wow, I had well, probably a couple of things. First of all, I've always believed in um oh, I don't know how to say it without sound really arrogant. Um, that like I don't really believe in the normal rules apply. So I'm like I have maybe a thing of like I want to do the opposite. If somebody says something, you can't do this, it makes me even more want to do it.
Mm.
Just to prove them wrong. So there's probably that a little bit to it. And a belief that like everything is just energy and it's not really I don't know how to say it's not really a solid reality, and there's no reason that you can't change things. You can always change things, I believe. And then it helps because my mum, she trains people in, it's called clean language, and um, so I had some sessions with her really early on, and I had, so the metaphor I had was that my leg, when, so this was right at the beginning, so where the symptoms started, my leg was full of junk, and all I had to do was clear out the junk, and that has stayed with me ever since. And so because if it because and the knowledge as well, sorry, I know I'm answering like several things all at the same time. The knowledge as well, the MS, they they know that there are genes related to it, and that if you can turn a gene on, you can turn a gene off. So I was like, I just believed that I could do it. I didn't believe
Yeah.
that it was, I didn't believe in it. I didn't believe the story. That I thought there's loads of people that are believing in this thing that's like this is an incurable thing. And then I met people. So I did the overcoming MS thing, and I went on the retreat, and I went to a group, and everybody that I've known over time, everybody's got better. It's not just me. It's a lifestyle
Yeah.
disease, and so once you change your lifestyle, then the disease gets better.
That's, yeah, incredible. I do want to make a quick note is like if anyone's hearing this and they're in pain, whether it's a like joint issues, um, like you got a like bulging discs, things like that, or if it's a chronic illness like MS or Parkinson's or something like that, like we're not saying necessarily just don't go to your doctor, ignore everything they say, and just make up your like follow a different path. I personally believe there's a balance of understanding what's going on from a doctor, and there's also your intuition and what your body's telling you, and that there's many different opinions from doctors themselves even, and to find doctors that share a future of possibility, not just the negative aspects. And there's some amazing doctors that do promote like the possibility of healing. And then there's others that are like, it's incurable. This is what you got. Your life's going to suffer. So there is a balance, and it's something for yourself to listen, whether you're going to choose to follow what your doctor tells you, find other opinions, or follow your intuition, and what the balance is of that. So just want to make that clear that it's not like ignore your doctor at all costs, go do something else.
Yeah, and
This,
that the people that I've met since then, I've heard, because I've stopped going to the neurologist now, but people who I've met who do still go, quite a lot of them have neurologists who are much more supportive, because there's so much research now into this, and so they combine the drugs and changing their diet and lifestyle things, and they're doing really well. I was just very unlucky with my neurologist. So.
yeah. And sounds like for you with that, you got to go the opposite way. It almost was that fuel that gave you some more energy to heal yourself.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I don't, yeah, I just couldn't. I was like, no, you're not going to tell me what's going to happen to me. It's my body. So, yeah, that was quite helpful to be. I suppose I'm quite stubborn, which maybe is not so good sometimes, but for this, it's been quite helpful.
Absolutely. And so you mentioned a couple of things that you've done healing wise, and I want to get to those in a moment. But just to give some contrast, there was a point in your life that you could barely walk, your feet were cold, and every day, like it was a struggle to function.
Yeah,
And you were told if you got off these drugs 2 years from now, you're not going to walk, talk, or eat.
yeah.
And so before we go into the healing aspect, like what's your life now? What's it like? What's possible for you? What have you done? And just to give a contrast to like to show that you have made some huge changes there.
Yeah, so I am the only sort of thing I have that is It's not an MS symptom, but I don't have massive amounts of energy. Um, it's partly because I still haven't managed to. I believe I have there's nothing wrong. It's just like a habit I've got in, and because I have a bit of a thing in my mind of like, oh, I have to for so long. I don't know. Sorry, I have to start again. Have you heard of the thing about the spoons? You know, the thing of like how much energy you have. It was like a thing. It was like a blog post. Somebody wrote, but it became quite a well-known thing. If you've got some kind of chronic fatigue or something, you're talking like how many spoons you've got. Have you heard of that?
I've not. No. Can you
No,
say more?
yeah, so it's like they describe it as, oh, I've only got like 5 spoons. They as my how much energy, and most people without any health problems, you have like an infinite number of spoons. It was to do with a woman who she was trying to explain to her friend, and she was in a cafe or something, and she was like, look, this is I've got 5 spoons, and I use one to have a shower, one to make my lunch, one to write an email, like, and then I have to go to bed because I've used up all my spoons. So that's what I was like for quite a while. It was like I might not have enough energy to um even to like just walk a very really short distance, or to like go to the shops. You know, might go to one shop and it's like, oh, I've run out of energy, or to even cook the dinner. I'd like, oh, I have to have something like a bowl of cereal because I can't stand and cook the dinner. Um, so anyways, that was for quite a long time, like longer actually. I had those symptoms than I did, which I think was a separate thing, but longer than I had the MS symptoms to begin with. And so it's kind of stuck. I still haven't quite cleared the thing of like managing, of monitoring my energy. So I still will like have a lie down in the afternoon, and I won't go for long walks. But other than that, I have no symptoms. So all of the things that I said, like been any fear, like no physical, just no symptoms other than thinking I've got not enough energy. But I still have, I've got a pedometer thing on my phone, and the other day I walked for over 2 miles. So I'm not like, that's, if I've got enough energy to do that, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you can walk 2 miles. Your mom mentioned that you can be out gardening and enjoying outside.
yeah,
Uh, and the only symptoms is energy, is the amount of energy you have. And it was interesting. You mentioned like it's a belief that you have, and you're like, you at the end you even said, I think I don't have enough energy,
yeah.
versus I don't
Because
have the energy.
because I know, because I see a naturopath, and she has tested my mitochondria, and apart from one, there was like, I can't remember exactly, they were tested on 4 things. One of them was a bit low, but the rest of them were fine. So I know that there isn't actually a problem, because I think, well, surely if 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 there was something all wrong with my mitochondria, which there probably was several years ago, then that would explain it. But it's just I get, I just know that I have like this belief, so I have to keep enough energy back for everything I need to do in the day, because I, for quite a long time, I did really have to do that, and it's like a habit, and I still haven't done. I need to do some work to clear it,
Mhm.
and I do it, but I don't. I still haven't done it enough.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, it's nothing. It's nothing. I suppose because I can do everything I need to really, and it's only a problem if I want to walk a really long distance, which I don't want to do that often. So then I don't do the work, if that makes sense.
Right. The you feel good, so good,
Yeah,
mostly that you're like the amount of effort, like I'm good, so I don't think about it. And then when there's that like once every now and then that you're like, I could do more miles. You're like,
yeah,
I should work.
yeah,
Yeah, I love that you shared that, and that's so common. Is like I had a client who has fibromyalgia, and I've learned a lot of the clean language, and am actually going through the training with your mom that's just started. Um, and I was doing the symbolic modeling, and it was like she talked to this flubber part of herself. It was like a little blob that she could talk to. At first, it was not a happy flubber, but it was. Anyways, the point was, she started talking with this part of herself, and she's like, "I don't ever have any energy. Like, I'm pain is much less, but I don't have any energy." And realized that she thought it was a mental energy that's not there, but physically she's fine. And the
Mm.
idea that she was so used to pushing at one point in her life, and she would push through when she didn't have energy, and then her body kind of fell apart, and that's when the fibromyalgia came into play. And so
Yeah.
that part of her is that like mental trigger of like, don't push too hard, you have to go rest. And so it's almost like that after effect of like wanting to keep her well, and she's transformed significantly, but it's like that reminder of like, okay, don't go too hard, don't make yourself sick, so let's not give you energy. And she
Yeah.
started talking to that part of herself, and as soon as we were done with the session, it's like, oh, energy's back.
Yeah. Yeah, I really need to do it. I really need to just do that last bit because I just know that it's still there, and that actually that's the only thing. That is the only symptom that I have. So it would be brilliant to. I suppose there's also some stuff around like um I don't know if this is all a little bit too deep, but um to really have no symptoms at all and to not have do you know what I mean? Like you have to be
Yeah.
diagnosed with something that you're supposed to not get better from, and then to really go, I'm not just don't have symptoms. I am better. I'm healthier. I'm much healthier than I was before I was even ill because I've lost
Yeah.
loads of weight as well, um and so and I just am generally I'm like happier and I'm just happier than I was before. And so it's like I suppose it's a bit kind of thinking, oh, who am I
Mm.
to think that I can do that? So that's something else I need to clear.
Yeah. So it sounds like but you are healthier and more vibrant now than you were before the illness, like even
Mm.
before you got symptoms.
Yeah, definitely.
And
Yes.
so to truly thrive would be like, okay, am I somebody that can actually thrive with that kind of energy? Like, who am I to transform that much?
Yeah.
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 And I wanted to emphasize it because that's when it comes to healing, there's so much of the mindset, even like our beliefs of what's possible to what we try. Um, and so for anyone listening, it's like the idea that it's like, what do you believe is possible, and what do you believe about yourself as far as transforming your own life? Like, do you have that kind of power?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing the contrast. And you mentioned a little bit about epigenetics and beliefs. And I want to hear from you. And then if depending on, I'll share a little bit about my understanding currently. But what is your thoughts on epigenetics and the basically what that is the body's ability to change which genes are active in any moment?
Well, I don't know that much about it other than that I know that when I first went to the hospital to have the drugs, they took some DNA or I don't know what they did really, but it was something, and because they said they were looking for the MS genes, and I know that they have found some, and that so they know that there are genes that if you didn't have those genes, that no matter what you wouldn't have it, but if you do, then you may or may not have it. And I also know that with MS there's a really strong correlation between basically if you live on the equator, nobody has it. The further north you go, so even in this country, so people in Scotland are more likely to have it than where I live in the south. So that's just a basic thing of vitamin D. So and that's so it's triggered. So people have the genes, and then their lifestyle has triggered the genes to. I think the word is to be expressed, be activated, and so I just well, since I've known that, I've thought, well, I've also known that they can be turned off again because if it can be turned on, then it can be turned off. And so if it's a lifestyle thing, then just by changing, well, there's two things. There's changing your lifestyle
Mhm.
so that you don't have the things that trigger it. But there's also changing your body's your coping your way of coping with stress because so that you can cope with because like even no matter how what you do, there will always be harder times in life, and so you have to change your coping strategies so your body doesn't just like go into the panic like give you a load of MS symptoms. You just need to learn how to deal with it and to feel find a way to cope that there's do you know what I'm trying to say? To cope with it without turning them back on again. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So when stress shows up, finding a different way to manage it where you can stay relaxed in the midst of what's showing up for your life.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And so for anyone that's listening for epigenetics, the Bruce Lipton wrote a book called Biology of Belief and talks about how every belief we have is going to create certain thoughts, which also create certain feelings. And the chemicals in the body that are produced are actually going to change the genes. And so that by changing the beliefs we have, we change biology and change the genes that are being expressed. The other one is Joe Dispenza's work on breaking the habit of being yourself. I was listening to him talk, and he's sharing the same thing where he had three different people with MS all get up after a 4 day meditation and could walk, and just like miraculous healings. And he talked about how when you feel the positive emotions, the ones that aren't stress, the body can relax and use that energy for healing. And when that energy, like joy, is being felt or love, we actually have different chemicals going on through our body and our brain, and it's changing the genes, which ones turn on and off. And they've actually done research where they show in the beginning of the 4 days, certain genes turned on. And then at the end, they show those ones turn off, new ones turn on, and the body's changing and actually getting healthier. And so if anyone's interested in epigenetics, I would highly recommend both Joe Dispenza's Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself and Bruce Lipton's Biology of Belief. And so for you, Charlotte, you said you always had that belief that you could get better, that
Mm.
there was something there. So I think that's powerful for even just finding solutions. What are some of those things that really stood out that have made a difference in your healing journey?
Well, the way that I saw it is you have to change. I know this can sound not um, sounds a bit too much just to do to begin with, because you have to change everything. So you have to look. There's so many things where it's like, oh, if you take this supplement or if you do this one exercise, is I think you have to look at every part of your life. So I changed my diet, which I was following the Overcoming MS. So it's basically plant-based plus fish, but over time I have adapted some things I have now that I aren't on that diet, and some things I don't have that I did used to have. It's because I also believe that everybody is different, and so you've got to find the right diet for you. So that made a massive difference. Having some coaching and therapy is all like made equally as much or even more difference. That has really, really helped. And then I've done quite a lot of things that have helped me. Like I use tuning forks quite a bit. I use these and different lights. They're basically different types of energy um, to keep my energy flowing and in like a healthy state. So yeah, I do tapping. So like I suppose there isn't really a classification for it. But energy techniques and sound and light are things I've used a lot. And meditation. Sorry, I know you said the best things, and I'm giving quite a long list. But yeah, meditation has been really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of them. And actually like there's not really, like I said, there's not just one. It's like everything all together is what's made a difference.
And I think that's a huge part. And so I want to go deeper into a couple of those, but I think that's a huge part is like sometimes we try the one thing and we notice a bit of a benefit, but it didn't fix it all. So we throw it away and then try the next thing.
Mm,
And how important it is to look at the whole of your life. And it's like, what kind of life do you want to live? It's like, what foods are going to support vitality? What movement supports vitality? What emotions and mindset supports that? And what's the combination that works best for you? And like you said before, it seems like the intuition of what's working and listening to your body, where you're like, okay, this like overcoming MS mostly is good for me, and then these couple things I'm going to tweak.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So yeah, so I think that's powerful is like it's all the habits and behaviors that make up your process and your healing journey?
Yeah, and everybody's is different. That's the main thing, because some things that I do, like tuning fork things, people might not, that would be too weird, or they wouldn't notice as much, but they've really helped me. And other people, like something I've really struggled with, because I'm not that keen on it, is doing actual exercise. There's things that I like. I try to incorporate as much movement as possible, and I do qigong, things like that, because I enjoy it. But I don't think, oh, I'll start going to the gym or anything like that. And whereas other people have found things like that really helpful. I think you've just got to find what's best for you.
Yeah. And I think like a lot of the gym stuff now is a lot of push force energy, which is going to be more fight or flight. Whereas
Mm,
something like Qigong is more, you're still using all the muscles in different directions, but it's a lot more flowing and working with your body. And
yeah,
correct me if I'm wrong in that.
yeah, and it's really enjoyable. I like doing
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So you mentioned, so I hope this is okay, but your mom's Marian Way, and she does a lot of training around clean language and symbolic modeling.
Yes.
And so you've worked with her, and what was some of the things that you found with clean language, with symbolic modeling, and what value did that provide in the process?
Well, like I said, the thing that helped the most to begin with was when I don't have much memory of what in that whole session, what the thing was, but that there was the metaphor was that my leg was filled with junk, and that what I needed to do was clear the junk, and um and that is what I've every time something else has ever come up, I'm like, oh, there's just a bit more junk, I just have to clear it.
Hmm.
And so, but I use clean language in with some of the other techniques that I do. I use it for myself. I haven't ever properly finished a training. I've done bits and pieces of it, and but I
Mm,
know the thing is, I know, um like I've just done, like, lots of times she's helped me with, oh, just have a session to help me with something, and so I know it kind of really well for my own use, and I know it really well for, but those are the things that I have experienced more, so I use it um in for myself, in like thinking what would I like to have happen, or
mm,
using it. I actually use quite a lot of clean space for my own use. I think with I combine things, so I put things in different spaces,
mm,
and then I might use the tuning forks, or I might I might move to a different space and talk to that space over there. And so I suppose I should just explain. So clean space is the idea that the different spaces, different things in different spaces, and by building up I don't know what the proper word for it is. I'll call it a network. So this space knows this, and this space knows this, and this space knows this, and they all know about the other spaces from. So you stand in that one space, and you know about another space from there. So I've used that quite a bit. Um, just to have it's just information um and clearing. I just think if everything is clearing out any things that are junk, anything that's bad, that's not true, um, to get to the truth and to get to your
mm.
kind of natural states where everything is flowing and working, and yeah, and doing is good for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the clean space, it's amazing how just shifting a, a process where you can stand in one spot and you get certain insights, and then you shift perspective to a new spot and you get new emerging information from your own like wisdom. And it's amazing how powerful the insights can be, and it seems like counterintuitive that just one step or a couple places different would completely change the information you get, but it's a very interesting experience.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I really like it.
Yeah. So you mentioned clearing and like clearing out the gunk and stuff in the legs. When you
Yeah.
say when you have a symptom, you just clear it out. What does that mean, and how do you go about doing that?
Um, so over time, I've found things that are um, that I find useful, and there's quite a lot of different things I might do. So I'm trying to think of an example. Um, or just realizing that there's something like a belief or something in your life. It's like, oh, that's not doing me much good to believe that. And so some of the things I do are tapping, um, where you tap on there's different points. EFT it's called, where you like keep repeating the thing and saying then the thing that you want, you acknowledge all the more negative things, and then you replace it with the positive things. I do tuning forks where it's called, I don't know if you've heard of it, it's called biofield tuning.
Mhm.
So there's the idea is, but not say idea, I completely believe it, that we store everything that's happened to us ever in our biofield, and so and it's all just tiny fragments of energy, but it stays there unless you can clear it out. If it's something that you've kind of kept on, if it's like an emotion that you didn't feel or something like that, or like, oh no, I can't be angry at the moment, but the anger is still there. And so I do it on myself. I use the tuning forks and I clear it, or I put the in my imagination, I put the issue on I put it on something, like I might put it on a chair in front of me, and then use the tuning fork, like moving it along to clear the energy around it, and then things just change, and it which is amazing. And those are probably my two main things I do. And I do quite a lot of, I might write as well. I might like journal about things. So I just write down basically everything that is, like, even if it's things that you like wouldn't even want to admit to yourself that you're feeling, or would say it tell anybody else. And if you just write it down and burn it, then it just like releases it out of your field, I want to say, like your mind, but also like your body and your biofield around you. Just clear it out there so that it's not there anymore. that's
Yeah.
that's it really.
Mm. So it sounds like the personal work that you do is typically you do some of the clean space, clean language questions, the EFT or tapping, and then biofield tuning plus journaling. Is that
Yeah,
so? That's what you do when for yourself.
yeah,
You also mentioned the role of therapy and coaching and how that was kind of a crucial point in that. And you mentioned before the call, it was Amanda Maney who you worked with in that process. What sometimes when we have an illness or body stuff, it's like I encourage people to do some of the symbolic modeling and coaching work, and it's like, no, I just have a body issue. What was your thought process going into it? What have you found? And what do you think the value is of therapy for someone who has chronic illness?
well, I think that some so I really do like clean language, clean space, and I I really believe it has helped me loads. And having Amanda um was it was the most helpful thing, because she encouraged me, but without, so there was no pressure to talk about anything you didn't want to talk about, but just really gentle support and encouragement, um, to go to the place, like the darker places, and um, do clearing techniques on them. She did some other things, um, as well as clean language and tapping things, but the having like I don't know the best way. So, like, just knowing that you can tell your deepest, darkest secrets to somebody. Because I read somewhere once, and it annoys me that I can't remember the third thing, but it was something like somebody saying, like a psychotherapist or somebody saying, the three things that cause trauma, that cause disease, sorry, are secrets, shame, and I can never I don't know what the third thing was, but I know it began with S. But and so I thought, if you're carrying around this stuff, and you just need to, like, for somebody else to hear it, but that somebody else has to not be somebody who you think would like hold any judgment against you, or or even that you particularly know. Like I didn't know her at all to begin with, and so that was just just like life changing, to be able to do that, and really powerful and really healing. So I mean, that is part actually of the overcoming MS thing. The book, they talk about having coaching or therapy as a healing method, because but still kind of people don't always see that as part of it. But like your mind being full of like ridiculous things that you're telling yourselves, or things that have happened to you that are traumatic and you haven't dealt with, it's like you're carrying it around with you all the time. And so if by sharing it and having somebody who's really experienced it, can just helps release it, and then you just feel better.
Mm. And I assume both emotionally and physically.
Yes, definitely, because that's what I suppose like the default thing is that they're linked. um, that's what I believe. So the more negative emotions you are carrying, the more negative physical things that you're experiencing. In my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, it's the mind body connection. It's amazing. It's like you can't hold a posture without starting to feel the feelings of that posture, and you can't feel a feeling without your body wanting to change to a new posture.
Yes, yeah,
And
definitely.
so we do work as posture specialists. It's like there's a link between the two, and most yeah, it's not it's more significant than people realize, I think.
Mm, yeah.
And so for you, if I'm curious for as a practitioner with helping work with people and coaching, what is some of the things that Amanda did? You said she used certain techniques. Do you have any idea, and you may not, what kind of other tools she used?
Well, the main thing that I had to do at the beginning, she did, it was called Meta Health, but my understanding, I don't really know what's happened with this, is that it's actually based on a thing, it's called German New Medicine, and the it's the thing that every trauma, everything that's happened to somebody causes a physical reaction in the same place. So everybody who has, for example, a certain type of cancer will have had a very similar thing happen to them in their life. And so, and the same with MS, which is all, it doesn't actually classify it as, oh, MS is one condition. It classifies it by all the different symptoms you've had. So somebody who had like an eye symptom would have a different trauma to somebody who have um,
Huh.
like loss of feeling in their hands, for example. They would be all different things. And so the thing that really that I remember the most, so the first thing I had to do was like I filled in like all these forms and stuff, but I had to make a list of everything bad that had ever happened to me in my life. And like I had so much things of like, oh, I will never think about that, I don't want to ever think about that, and
Mm.
I had pushed it out. So like I just almost like it didn't happen, but I was still there. And so to write this list, and I was like, oh my god. And so then she would use that list to sort of to work from, but she would only do things that I felt comfortable with
Mm.
talking about. And then so her techniques were, she did she did a lot of tapping, but it was a sort of a more advanced tapping. I can't remember. I think it's called Matrix, some
Mm.
Matrix something. Um, and she also did a thing which was, I think I've never heard of it. I think she had. There's only like a small group of people who did it. It's called Do the Opposite, and so you would go, so you'd find something that you sort of had experienced, and then she'd ask you, and so what does this mean to you or about you? And you'd basically get to the core belief that was like I'm a bad person, might be at the root of the
Mm.
of the thing. And then she would encourage you to think of a belief that you wanted to have instead. And then she would keep saying, do the opposite, do the opposite, over and over, and you'd have to rate like how much on a scale of 0 to 100, how much you believe this thing, and then the number would change over time, and the thing wouldn't be there anymore. That was, yeah, she would use a combination of things, but that's what I remember the most. Maybe she was using other things as well that I didn't even uh,
Yeah.
know at the time.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. So we're about out of time, and so for somebody in who has a chronic illness or maybe in a darker place, what would you tell them as they're going through their journey?
Oh, well, I tell them that I know it's hard, and like don't pretend. So first of all, don't pretend it's not. Like to really accept, yeah, this is really hard, and to know that anything can change, um, and there is always light, and there's I can't remember. There's a quote about it, but I'm not sure exactly. But like there's light for if you choose to find it or something like that. I would to find support. The main things I've done is to have people. I have so many people who believed in me, and it can be, I know of people who have people who like their family doesn't believe that they can get better, and that's really really hard. So I've been really fortunate in like my husband and my son and all my family have always believed that I can do this. And then I've found people, I've gone to the overcoming MS group where other people have followed the same as me. I've had the therapist who I only worked with her because I knew she believed that this was possible. I've
Hmm.
surrounded myself with people who believe it's possible, and I read things about it's possible, and I avoid things that say it's not. I don't ever look on any normal MS based stuff because it would be too negative. Just remember, everything is energy, and so just surround yourself with the best energy you can manage. I know that's not always possible, but to that's what my recommendation is.
Thank you. It sounds like, if I heard that correctly, it's accepting that it is hard and it is a dark place. And along with that, you can always find the light and
Yeah,
to surround yourself with positive people who believe it's possible to heal compared to people that are going to tell you that it's not possible. And
yeah,
just having that supportive, hey, anything's possible around you just helped you to continue into that journey.
yeah. And
Beautiful.
listening to your intuition, like because you know deep down yourself far more than any other people or doctors or anything. You know whether you know what you can do and what might help you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. So follow your intuition as well.
yeah.
So thank you for sharing all of that. Really powerful story. For somebody, where would you like to send somebody if they wanted to learn more about either healing or therapy? I know you mentioned a little bit before the call.
Yeah, so if somebody was interested in learning techniques to help people, so learning clean language, which is one of the methods that I've used to help, then my mum is Marian Way and she trains people in clean language, and that's her company is Clean Learning, clean and website cleanlearning.co.uk. And then the therapist that I used is called Amanda Maney, and that's Amanda Maney dot I think she's .com, and that's Maney is how you spell her surname.
Perfect. So I will make sure to put that in the notes. So that is Clean Learning with Marian Way, and then Amanda Maney for coaching and therapy for healing. And
Yes,
so really appreciate you being on the call today. Thank you so much for everything. And I look forward to hearing in the future when you overcome that block around energy and you're like, yeah, I have as much energy as I want.
yes, definitely. Thank you for having me. It's been really, really enjoyable.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.